This is a recipe for some bread and butter pickles that we like to make. They're a very sweet pickle. They're almost like a candied pickle. And my mom got the recipe from a friend of the family's about 50 years ago. So, this is just how I make them. And this year you can see I'm using those Japanese cucumbers instead of the regular cucumbers. I figured I'd try them. So, basically you get all your canning supplies out, and I start by just giving the jars a real good washing over, inside and out. I scrub them up pretty good. You always want to have everything, real and clean and sterilized and ready to go. So this, it doesn't take long, and I got that nice brush to get in the jars, and then I'm going to take all the cucumbers, and they've got those little prickly spine things on them, and I use one of those mitts to get them off. And then for this recipe, the cucumbers are actually peeled, so I just have one of those little peelers and just quickly run over all the cucumbers. And then I like to slice them with a crinkle cut, so I get out the mandolin and I set it with the blade, the crinkle cut up, and set the thickness, and then I proceed to slice them. And you can see I use that little pusher block behind them to keep my fingers away from the blades. These things can be dangerous, and I guess some people recommend that you actually get one of those cut-proof gloves for them. But they do a real good job at, slicing the crinkle cuts like that. So I'm just going to take my cucumbers, and I'm cutting out any of the big sections with big seeds and just trying to use the smaller sections. And it takes 8 cups of the cukes per batch. And then I like to use Vidalias for the onions, and it takes 2 sliced onions per batch, medium size, but I like to use just 1 large Vidalia. So, you just clean them off, and same thing, but this won't fit on the mandolin, so I'm just going to take a couple passes to, narrow it down a little bit so I can just go through and, just quickly slice it up. And I've got it set for a little bit under 1/8 of an inch, I think, the slices here. And I just like to cut the slices so they're a little easier to deal with when you get them out of the jar. So actually I'm doing a double batch in this video, so I've doubled everything, as you can probably see. And I just mix the cucumbers and onions together in a stainless steel bowl there, and then you need some non-iodized salt, and that's a 1/4 cup per batch, so I'm going to use double that here, and just sprinkle it on them, and then fill it with cold water to to cover the pickles, and mix it up a little bit and just let it soak for 1 hour. Put that aside. Then there also, you can put red peppers in. They're optional. I don't have any red ones, so I'm just going to use some yellowish and green ones this year. So I just like to chop them finely, and just for a little color. And there's some little Italian stuffing peppers that we grow. They're really good too. And then you do 2 cups of vinegar in a large saucepan per batch, and I'm doubling it again. And then 2 teaspoons of the celery seed per batch. And we just, put this all in a large saucepan here to get it heated up. Then 3 teaspoons of this turmeric per batch. And this stuff is pretty nasty. It can stain anything it gets on, so you want to be a little careful with that. And then there's 3 cups of sugar per batch. So as you can see, that's why these things are super sweet. And actually, in the end, you do... Oh, there's my spice rack. We've really been enjoying that. Helps us really keep track of everything for, canning and cooking and stuff. But you put everything in the pot and turn the heat on, and you have to stir it to get that sugar to dissolve. Just constantly stirring it, and bring it up to a rolling boil. And I put those fine chopped peppers in, you can see there. But you have to keep, stirring it, and then drain the cucumbers. You don't rinse the salt off them. You just, drain them through a strainer. Let them drip for a little while. Get all the liquid out of them. And then I just, put them back into the bowl once they're drained. And They're going to be added to the pot there with the the boiling. I guess you call it a brine almost. I'm just going to add them in and stir them up a little bit, and just you have to bring this pot back to a rolling boil with the cucumbers in it now, and that can take a while. So I just I like to stir it every couple of minutes just to keep all that sugar from burning. And you also want to be careful of that brine now too. Now I'm getting the lids ready, and I'm using these new style lids that say you no longer heat them, you just wash them with hot soapy water. So this is kind of new to me. I've always heated them in the past, and actually I just bought some new jars. I'm going to do something about those lids now. So there it is. It's back to a boil, and you boil it 20 minutes and stir it constantly. In the meantime, I've got my jars starting to heat up and sterilize there, and you can see they've been steamed for a little while, and so I'm just going to drain them and put them on a rack over by the cukes and brine. And after 20 minutes, you just start to fill the hot jars, and I like to try to get as much of the cucumbers and pickles as I can. Just kind of drain the juice, just divide it evenly between the jars. Now this recipe makes 3 pints, so there you can see there's 6 pints. I'm going to start with all the solid material and divide that up, and then go back and just top it off with the brine. And you use one of these little pokers to get the air out of it. Just make sure there's no air bubbles left in it. And then I always do extra jars just in case. So I just got rid of jars there, and then just go back and use that little headspace gauge there, and just bring them back to a 1/2 inch headspace for processing. Then I usually take like a damp paper towel and just wipe the seal surface off just so there's nothing there. And then just add those washed lids. Then next thing is a ring, with any canning process. And then after the rings are in place, I go back and I just kind of adjust them. And I've got one of those hot mitts from Ball that works really good to hold things and keep from getting burned, because everything's hot at this moment. And then once everything's ready, you just put them back in the pot, and this is a boiling water method. And I had started out with a couple extra jars, so what's going to happen is once I get everything loaded in, I'm going to be a little bit short of water for processing. So I'm just going to add water until I've got about the water covering the jars by 1 inch, and then bring it up to a boil, get everything boiling good, and start your timer. And these are a 20-minute process time, so you want to make sure during the process that it's always boiling. It never goes below a boil. And when it times out, just turn the heat off and let it sit for a while to cool down somewhat so you can get the jars out. So basically there they are, and they're really like a sweet candied bread and butter pickle, and we don't make a lot of them. We only usually do a batch like this every year, but they are fun for the holidays. Then after they cool down for 24 hours, I go back and wash the jars and take a Sharpie and just label what they are, and they're ready to head down to the root cellar and just be put in storage for a while. And I just thought I'd share this with you because it's one of those old-time recipes that we still use and we enjoy. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.